Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, May 1st, 2025. Time for another month of this nonsense. Another show. It's May Day, and also time for another round of protests nationally, as it turns out. We'll see how the turnout looks with a midweek protest. I guess they really wanted to go with the May Day thing, and why not? It should be interesting and fun, and we'll see what kind of crowds a Thursday protest can produce. Saturday seems like it's the day the normies want to do their thing. But, you know, Thursday, why not? Sure, it's a nice day. I think nationally, just everywhere is going to be nice, as it turns out. I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go along. Plenty to catch up on today. Yesterday, having been the big 100 days push, the Trump cabinet got together for a toe-sucking session. Everybody had to come and, of course, say how wonderful and brilliant Donald Trump was and all of the amazing accomplishments that he has racked up during the 100 days. I don't know if anybody had checked and saw whether the math was right, whether or not they had, in fact, counted 100 days properly, because they didn't count anything else properly. The one that struck me most was Pam Bondi, who really went over the top. Pam Bondi credits superhero Trump, Captain Trump America, I guess, with having saved the lives through fentanyl intervention at the border. I guess someone must have tried to do some math and totaled up the tonnage of fentanyl stopped at the border. And then someone, I guess, used AI to figure out how much fentanyl does it take to kill a person, and then did the math there and decided that was the number of people who didn't die thanks to Captain Trump America's border intervention. They all would instantly have died, of course, just because they were in the same country as fentanyl. You know how they feel about fentanyl. Just saying the word is a little bit dangerous, actually. And apparently, the math didn't work out exactly for several days, because apparently she gave a totally different number the day before on Twitter. But at the cabinet meeting, and she called out the media. Are you ready for this, media? President Trump has saved 258 million lives with his interdiction at the border on fentanyl. That is to say, 3/4 of the American population were nearly instantly murdered in the just since late January. 3 months, 100 days. By the way, that's like 2.5 million people a day or something like that. 30 people an hour or so are dropping dead just for fear of fentanyl. And there was also some weirdness about kids are going and they're buying Advil and they're finding out it's fentanyl and dying. Like, I really have no idea what she thought she was expressing here. All right. Well, it's time for us to demonstrate the power of the new technology. It is May, and Skype is gone, although actually I think there's a couple of days left on Skype. They're going to do something like the 5th, maybe over the weekend. But we have long since transitioned to Zoom, and the great power of Zoom, as it turns out, is that it doesn't make any noise when Greg comes in the side entrance. So we had to come up with, of course, fanfares for his announcements, and there are many to choose from. I'll pick one at random today and welcome him here. But isn't this nice? This silent entry. But for now, I like this one too. Some timpani. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning.
Cow,
That's
Your
a good
Majesty.
one.
Wow.
I like that.
Yeah. Grand orchestral brass intro.
Right.
I was going to try trumpet fanfare fail. I'm not sure what that is. That doesn't sound so good. We might want to use that for another sound effect. You probably would have accepted that one as well. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I may be well. We'll find out.
It's May.
Yes.
We'll find out on the 4th.
Right. May the 4th coming up.
Well, today's May Day. There's going to be some protests around, but
Yes.
I think the important thing
Huzzah.
to do is to focus, again on where Trump is
Where
relative
Trump
to
is.
where other presidents have been.
Yes.
And, he's in a dreadful hole when it comes to political support. And that matters
Hmm.
because you start to lose the ability to do things. Let me give you an example.
I will
He
take
lucked
it.
out, Trump did. Yesterday, the Senate rejected a bipartisan measure to undo Trump's tariffs. It would have been symbolic because the House wouldn't have gone along. But
Yes.
the reason that Trump was able to do this is that it was a 49-49 tie because for whatever reason, Sheldon Whitehouse and Mitch McConnell weren't there, and they would have supported it.
Shuffleboard, I imagine.
I suppose, although Whitehouse isn't all that old.
No,
But
but he was
uh,
humoring him.
yeah, but it just shows that what Trump is trying to do is extremely fragile, and it takes an
Like McConnell.
absence
Yeah.
to actually quote win unquote, which really wasn't a win. The message was sent. They didn't have the votes to overturn it anyway, so it was all symbolic, but the symbolism is still there. And if
Yes.
you're going to look to symbolism again in terms of how the economy is doing, interestingly, the economy contracted in the first quarter yesterday, and that's the top headline.
Hmm.
Why it contracted is very interesting. As the economists point out, the reason that it contracted is because businesses were so spooked by the tariffs
Boo. Yes.
that they ordered a ton of things from overseas.
Yeah, sure. A lot of
So,
businesses.
so imports surged.
Yeah. I mean,
When you figure
artificial, but
GDP, gross domestic product, what you do as a matter of mathematics, not even higher calculus,
I don't know if
is
they
you
know that.
subtract imports from the total output. And the
Okay.
imports were so great that they made the number negative. So
Hmm.
people are working, people are producing things. Those were all good in terms of gross domestic product. But the imports were so great, they turned the number into a negative. Now,
Hmm.
some economists will say, well, underlying stuff is strong, so this was artificially low. But actually, not being an economist, there's nothing artificial about it. They were low because Trump's tariffs and fear of the coming recession made the
Hmm.
numbers what they are.
Yes.
And so that's really the message. It's not that, oh, the economy is better than it appears in this quarter. The real hit's going to be in the second and third quarter. Well, that's because you're an economist. But the picture that's being told here with the numbers, with the facts, is that people are assuming there's going to be a recession, and they're
Yeah,
assuming that the tariffs are going to screw up trade, and they're
they are.
assuming they're not going to be able to get the products they need, and they're assuming that there's going to be empty shelves, and so they're acting accordingly in their own interest. And none of that is, quote, good for the economy.
Hmm. No.
Those are all bad
Can't say
signs.
how. There's nothing but bad signs at this point.
Right. So you can't say it's an artificial bad sign. No, it's a real bad sign. It's just a different bad sign than the
Oh,
one
it's
that
real
we're going to
bad.
get next quarter when actual output is down.
Yeah.
And we talked yesterday about instead of looking at Wall Street, if you want to look at Main Street, we talked about the fact that on the strip in Nevada, in Las Vegas,
Yeah. Is that a main street? I guess so.
business is down.
Yeah, and their business is stealing money.
Yeah, but that business is down.
I can't
Well,
believe
here's
it.
another, you could look to see, well, how are dollar store sales going?
Hmm. Hmm.
That will
Yes.
often tell you a lot. And this one is in an uncertain economy, McDonald's sees spending decline. The burger giant, much watched barometer for consumer sentiment, reported lower revenue in the first quarter.
Well, they're
Now, I don't know if they
lying.
get their beef from Argentina
Hmm.
and whether that means there's a
Oh.
tariff.
Okay. Yeah.
But same
I guess there
same
is.
store sales
Well,
rose
maybe paused.
2.5% last year and 3.6
Well.
decline this year, 3.6% decline this year. Revenue fell 3%.
Hmm.
Income declined 3%. This is a closely watched barometer, according to the Times, for consumer spending and sentiment, especially among lower income consumers and the company's financial results pointed to jittery customers.
Mm-hmm.
Again, none of that is good. So you want to say that the first quarter numbers are artificial, you can go ahead and say that, but you don't know what you're talking about if you do.
Okay. I don't.
Well,
I might.
if that's what you say.
I haven't said it yet. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, well,
When I do, I won't
don't
know.
act on it.
Okay.
All right. The market is jittery. I mean, it's not having these huge swings anymore. They're sort of gotten used to the fact that they don't really know what's going on, and nobody really knows what's going on. But one of the things that's happening is Trump is trying to change the narrative, which is always fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. Well,
after a report that the U.S. economy had contracted during the first 3 months of the year, Trump tried to blame Biden.
Sure, why not? He's not busy.
And some other stuff he gave a speech on Wednesday claiming that like everything is great. And then when people asked him about, well, do you think the shelves are going to be empty? He said, so girls buy $2 instead of 50. And so the dolls are going to cost $1 or $2 more.
Yeah, what's it to you?
So what?
I'm
rich. What's it to you?
Right.
Yeah. So the New York Post headline I sent you, it's in the meeting chat. Skimp on the Barbie. If you remember Shrimp on the Barbie from the old, come to Australia ads. Skimp on the Barbie. Trump admits tariffs will raise some prices, cause shortages. Maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30.
Yeah, maybe.
That's going to go over real well at Christmas.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe he's already fighting the war on Christmas. But, that's what presidents do, apparently.
Right. General Motors just announced that profits are going to be down by $4 to $5 billion this year.
Oh.
And we look forward to maintaining a strong dialogue with the administration on softening tariffs on car makers.
Yes, they do want that.
Right.
They might get
Elon Musk is having some doubts. Seated at the head of a large conference table inside the West Wing's Roosevelt Room on Wednesday, Musk, dressed in a signature T-shirt and blazer, where's the tie, ducked the question whether his Doge department would meet his pledge of slashing $1 trillion. No, it's possible, but it's a long road to go. It's sort of how much pain are people willing to take? Well, duh. You mean you can't do it because like real life.
Right. They're about a quarter of the way to the halved number that they're now going with. Oh, we'll do they promised $2 trillion, then they cut it in half to $1 trillion, and then they're about 25% of the way there, and most of that is fake. And it doesn't count the costs that they're incurring searching for and failing to get these cuts.
The authoritarian government in El Salvador has rejected a diplomatic note from the Trump administration inquiring about the possible release of a deported Salvadorian immigrant, according to two people with knowledge of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's unclear whether the diplomatic effort was a genuine bid by the White House or not, because you can never tell anything about the White House. Whatever they say, don't believe them. Some legal experts suggested, this is a story from the Times, that the whole thing was a show. Could have been an attempt at window dressing, seeking to give the appearance of being in compliance with the Supreme Court, but not really doing anything.
Yes. I'm surprised it took them this long to get around to it. Why don't I just send you a request, and then if you reject the request, we tried.
So in an interview with ABC News, because Trump just speaks without thinking, and this is constant, he said in an interview with ABC that he had the ability to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia back, after having said that he doesn't have the ability to bring Abrego Garcia back. But, when he's under stress, Trump's reaction is, well, whatever it is, I can do it.
Yeah.
So, you're telling me that I failed at this, and this? Well, let me tell you how great I'm so great that I'm even taking my own words back, and I can do things that I said I couldn't do. That's how good I am.
Yeah.
So that's basically what that was.
I would say if you're still looking for ways to credit Terry Moran for that interview, that was probably the best use of journalistic jujitsu that I've seen anybody do with him, where he's on the record saying, I can't bring him back. It's not up to me. And he did resort to that a little bit, saying we have lawyers who make these decisions. And Moran knew, but you're the president. You can do anything. And he said, you're right. I am the president. I can do anything. So he really did. That
I
actually
can fly.
worked.
Watch me jump out the window.
Well, he should have tried that next. I don't know if everyone knows this about President Trump, but he can actually withstand the weight of a tractor trailer being dropped on him.
Yeah, and look, don't worry about it because we're talking about the White House. So if he jumps out the first floor,
Yeah,
nothing's
right.
going to happen.
It's not an issue. But that was Moran's
So
best
it's not like a
move, I thought.
Putin window.
Yeah, right.
It's a White House window.
Yes, they build up there. Okay.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio declined on Wednesday to say whether the State Department had been in touch with El Salvador about the release and return of Mr. Abigail Garcia. I would never tell you that. And you know who else I would tell? I wouldn't tell a judge. Because the conduct of our foreign policy belongs here and not some judge. Let me change the subject entirely and have you write about that instead of you asking me these stupid questions that I don't want to answer, like what the hell are we doing?
Well, apparently they did ask, and he authorized them to do so and probably had okayed the note already, but felt compelled to say no at the meeting. That's interesting.
Paula Azinas, who's overseeing the case in Federal District Court in Maryland, has opened a searching inquiry into the case, looking into whether Trump officials acted in bad faith. She placed it on hold last week after the administration asked for a delay after revealing that the State Department had engaged in appropriate diplomatic discussions. Justice Department asked for an additional delay on Tuesday. Judge Innes said no.
Okay. Yeah.
So they have a deadline of Monday to see what's going on. So they could, today's Thursday, so they have 5 more days to play around and pretend they're doing stuff.
Well,
then they have to answer.
Elon says they love working nights and weekends. Let them do it.
Right.
Okay.
Now, this, going back to our economy shrinking stuff, this is an interesting piece in the Washington Post. Heather Long, an economist herself, and several other top-flight economists, according to themselves, and the Washington Post, are talking about what it really means that the economy is shrinking. How alarmed should we be? And one of them said, it's just arithmetic.
Well, it is.
It's just because of that, import thing. On the other hand, you should fear the second and third quarter. So I'm not optimistic at all about any of this. I'm actually rather scared. But this isn't the thing to be scared about. As I said, if you're not an economist, but the reason the math is because of the tariffs.
Yes. That is, okay. I don't know why sugar.
I share the general sense of alarm. It's just not in this data.
Okay. Fine. It's in other data. I guess, or, bring in a behavioral economist who can tell you why.
The same economist who said you can't go by the numbers here because the numbers are fooling you into thinking it's worse than it is. It's going to be even worse than you think next time, but not this time. So he says, look, what isn't included in the first quarter is the massive uncertainty, the plummeting consumer confidence, the shrinking 401k balances. And yes, that involves a lot of Americans who, quote, aren't in the stock market. And the sticker shock from tariffs. Add that, and it spells recession. Of course, Trump would say this had nothing to do with tariffs in capital letters. It must be true. He also said he cut 200 trade deals in a world of 195 countries. Second quarter is when we start to experience head spinning from Liberation Day.
Yeah. Yes, true, right. Not only did they say they were going to have 90 deals in 90 days, but in another of his interviews, what was it? The Time magazine interview. We've already done 200 deals.
Yes.
And I think they asked an official about it, one of the smiling liars who usually goes on and asked him, well, what's the deal with 200 deals but less than 200 countries in the world? How does that happen? Well, I think he's talking about some of those are sub deals, which I thought was $5 footlongs at Subway, but no, apparently sub deals is it's not a thing. I guess that's supposed to mean we have 200 deals with one country.
I'm old enough to remember when Obama mentioned that he visited 57 states. It was as big a scandal as him wearing a tan suit.
Right. We can't have that. Somehow there were no entreaties to meet him in the middle on that, but okay.
Right. So reasonable tariffs do not necessarily produce recessions. They just make the economy less efficient. The main cause for recession is the massive uncertainty in this particular case, said one of the economists, referring, of course, to Donald Trump.
Yes. There's uncertainty, certainly. And like a 10% tariff is actually pretty huge, but compared to like what he's been threatening. But 10% tariffs would be much, much more than moderate tariffs ordinarily. But then, of course, if you add into that, well, with our largest trading partner, I'm going to have such an outrageous and insane tariff policy and the number and the fluctuation in the number that, you can't help but point to the tariffs as economy wrecking.
Right. So Heather Long asks two of the economists, let me put it another way.
All right.
Can we still avoid a recession? If Trump pulls back some more on the tariffs, can we avoid the risk case? And one of them says, well, maybe. If Trump decides to pull all the tariffs back,
yeah,
and promises never to touch the economy again, maybe.
Yeah.
The other one says, the reality that's so devastating is that this was such a strong economy. Trump inherited it. He just had to watch it and claim credit for it. And he couldn't do that.
Just do nothing. You're really good at that, usually. But yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, to actively destroy the economic activity that we had, and it is very difficult at this point to avoid a recession because, economics, macroeconomics, next quarter's results are kind of already programmed in. Everybody has made their decisions.
Everybody knows what they are, and everybody knows the shelves will be empty.
Yeah.
But, if you want to hear something reassuring
they made this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
It's that, Heather Long asked the economists, is there anything can Trump do to make it worse? And they said, sure.
Oh, gosh. What kind of question is that?
He could mess with the Fed and just blow everything up.
Yeah. Right. Abolish the dollar. Yeah. Switch us to Trump coin. Yeah, that also would do. But let the fentanyl back in, and 3/4 of the population is instantaneously evaporated. By the way, I want to let everybody know that Trump has stopped a threat. I did the math on this one. Trump himself has stopped a threat 50% more deadly than Thanos himself. This is amazing. 75% of the population would have died had he not intervened. Thanos would merely kill one of every two. So
yeah, he was only 50. So
the guy's a piker.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
just to put him in. I know you need to compare Trump to the Marvel.
Whoever gave Trump the Infinity Stones is just like
this was a bad idea.
That was a bad choice. Bad idea.
Believe it, right? Yeah. So if I snap my fingers, 50. If I snap again, what happens? Well, another 50%. Well, let's do that then. And that's how you get
Philip Bump writes in the Washington Post. Again, this is in terms of Trump's 100 days, which I think ended yesterday. So now that it's 101st, everybody can say he sucks. Yeah. America gave Trump another chance. He's blowing it. For a brief moment after the election, Trump's favorability numbers went up. So much for that. And so he just goes over all the stuff we've been going over. Loser, big L.
Yep.
Compared to everybody. The shifts are broadly uniform across age, gender, party, and race. Trump's presidency is viewed more negatively now than it was then, back in the day, which is in the 2016s. Oh. This isn't uncommon. It's usually been the case that incoming presidents are granted a honeymoon, but differences here. Even Trump's higher approval rating early in the year was low. For the first few months of his second term, the only president who was viewed more negatively at the same point was Donald Trump. Well, of course, we knew that. Well, we've gone over this on the show. Another difference is that Trump's decline has been unusually steep.
Yes.
So
you mean his
when
mental
he falls, he falls. Now, well, if you're talking about the strip in Las Vegas, and if you're talking about McDonald's, and if you're talking about car makers starting to lose money, if you're talking about businesses going bankrupt because they can't fill their shelves, I mean, this is going to just hit Main Street in a major, major, major way. It isn't just Wall Street, which really isn't the economy, but it tells you a lot about how businesses are thinking. Large businesses.
And as for the rest of us, like you keep pointing out, okay, if you just lie and say the economy is great, but everybody goes and says there's nothing to buy in the stores and I can't afford it anyway, they know better.
They do.
Yeah.
Paul Blumenthal writes in the Huffington Post, Trump's first 100 days destroying America was the plan all along. Trump wants to be the anti-FDR, and it's a whole rant about how Trump and his cronies and the people around him have written books about the fact that they have to abolish FDR. They have to get rid of the 20th century. They have to get rid of everything in the 20th century that we think is good. The country, the America we know, was born in the 20th century. They have to get rid of it. They have to go back to the 19th century.
Okay. Did we get rid of Reagan in the process or no?
Well, that's
one of the good things.
Tis an ill wind that blows nobody any good. That's all I can say.
Well, all right.
Now, and they're mad at Reagan because Reagan could never fully roll back the achievement of the New Deal. So Reagan's no icon to them.
Okay. Well, then
The Republican
yeah,
Party
maybe.
must lead a realignment along nationalist, populist lines that forces the left to moderate then real politics, voting, ruling and being ruled, compromise, acceptance of the other side's legitimacy can return. When he says
What?
the other side, he means other white nationalists like himself. Because he
Yes.
wants to exclude everybody else. And they want to pursue what Russ Vought, who is the Office of Management and Budget guy,
Boo.
said is a post-constitutional moment where the ordinary rules of democracy and the rule of law must be set aside in order to turn back the clock to before the New Deal set America on its path of greater equality. So they've just written all this stuff down. It's not making it up to say, no, this is what they want to do. They wrote it just like they wrote Project 2025. So just so people
that seems
are
like
aware.
a bad idea. But okay.
It does to me, but hey, I just live in this
I'm
country.
just
I
going to
just
be
live here.
using it at your trial. That's all. Okay. Thanks for the evidence. I guess.
The last thing we should mention before the break, just to
Says
get it
you.
in, is that the science cuts are also going to hurt the U.S. economy.
Sure. It's part of the economy.
Billions of dollars in grants to scientists at Columbia, Harvard, other universities. Deeper cuts are on the way.
Wait, did you say Harlem or Harvard?
Harvard, Columbia,
Okay,
Harvard,
just checking.
other universities.
Yes.
There's no Harlem University,
No. there's
except
not.
maybe in the Netherlands
In Trump land. Yes.
with two A's.
Okay, right, true. All right, well, yeah, science cuts, of course. Well, that's it's investment, R&D. It's what enables science companies, pharmaceutical companies, medical researchers, etc. Oh, that builds a huge part of the economy. Get rid of it. I mean, it was a freebie to them. I mean, in a way, it's sort of kind of maybe a good idea, except then we don't all get medical benefits from it. And I don't mean insurance coverage. I mean, cures. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Lots to get to, and
There's stuff. There's some stuff. I
time
don't
to
have
do
all
it.
that much stuff.
Okay,
But-
well then we won't get to any of it.
I will give you a blast from the past because this
Please.
is funny.
Okay.
This is a Truth Social post from Donald Trump dated January 29, 2024. Capital letters.
Of course.
This is the Trump stock market. Because my polls against Biden are so good, investors are projecting I will win.
Okay,
Right.
so 2024, he's claiming credit for the Biden economy and the stock market because really they're all just, the stock market's going up because everyone knows he's going to win and they're excited
Right.
about it. I got you.
April
All right.
30th, 2025. This is Biden's stock market, not Trump's. He writes, I didn't take over until January 20th.
Right, and now?
Okay, yeah. And on January 29th,
Mhm.
2024, a year before that, you said this is Trump's stock market.
Right.
But now all of a sudden it's Biden's.
It's pretty
Tariffs will
amazing.
start kicking in. We know that. That's
Oh.
the problem. And
Right.
companies are starting to move into the U.S. in record numbers. Our country will boom, and we have to get rid of the Biden overhang. That bad numbers have nothing to do with tariffs, capital letters, only that he left us with bad numbers. But when the boom begins, it will be like no other. Be patient. He could have added boom, boom, boom in big capital letters. It would have been just as stupid. So, yeah, he's trying to run away from it, and it's not working so well.
I mean, what can I tell you? That's just kind of crazy, and everybody will know it. But it's the kind of thing that no one will report. Miller will tell him.
Well, in polite newspeak, Trump tries to change the topic. Trump tries to, Trump tries to weasel out of being responsible. Let me tell you how it's going. This is from Interactive Polls over at the bad site, because that's where they post.
Oh, yeah. All right.
See if I could send it to you.
This is how long it takes to find these things now because of how bad that site is or something. I gotcha.
Reuters Ipsos, Trump approval, approve 42, disapprove 53. On handling immigration, -3. The economy, -20. Inflation, cost of living, -27. Mm-hmm. Interesting that people separate inflation and cost of living with the economy. The economy's jobs. Inflation, cost of living is price of eggs.
I have a job, can't afford anything. Different problem.
The share of respondents who approve of Trump's economic stewardship declined to a percentage point to 36.
36% approval of economics.
The economy, 36 to 56. The lowest level in his current term or in his first term. Disapproval rose 5 points to 56%. 5 points in a month. Wait till next month.
Well, we like to do things on a shorter timeline now.
We do.
That's the news cycle for you.
So another thing to throw in, by the way, are losses in court. We talked about how some of the other judges are, supervising the El Salvadorian case.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is Jamel Jafar writing on Blue Sky. Over the past 24 hours, a judge in New Jersey held that he has jurisdiction to consider Mahmoud Khalil's First Amendment challenge. That's the Columbia grad student.
Oh, yes.
A judge in Vermont ordered ICE to free Mohsin Madawi. I don't even remember which bad thing that was because there's so many.
Yeah,
a judge in Boston green-lighted AAUP and MESA's challenge to the broader ideological deportation policy. The judges in Vermont and Boston both fault the Trump administration for relying on Red Scare First Amendment cases that have been discredited by history and superseded by later decisions. Those are the lawyers.
Yeah.
Right. For example, from Judge Crawford's decision.
Handling us. Yes.
The court also considers the extraordinary setting of this case and others like it. Legal residents not charged with crimes and misconduct are being arrested and threatened with deportation for stating their views on political issues. Our nation has seen times like this before, especially during the Red Scare and Palmer raids of 1919-1920 that led to the deportation of hundreds of people suspected of anarchy or communism. In Collier versus Skeffington, Judge Anderson of the District of Massachusetts granted habeas relief to multiple immigrants detained for political beliefs. His decision was instrumental in bringing an end to the moral panic that gripped the nation, similar themes seen in the McCarthy era in the 50s, and then quotes multiple examples. This is Justice Jackson, moved to dissent in U.S. Nauf v. Shaughnessy, writing in a habeas corpus case concerning the exclusion of a German war bride. Security is like liberty in that many are the crimes committed in its name. The menace to the security of the country, be it great as it may, from this girl's admission, is as nothing compared to the menace to free institutions inherent in procedures of this pattern. So the wheel of history has come around again, and we're not having it, basically, is what the judge said.
It's got a flat tire.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not as familiar with all of that history,
the point there, again, I'm not a non-lawyer, but I don't think it goes well for you when the judge writes an opinion saying you, the lawyer for the government, are completely mischaracterizing the law.
Yes.
And you're either incompetent or stupid or lying. I can't tell.
Certainly in trouble.
You're wrong.
Yeah. It's a huge ethical problem when you're deliberately misinterpreting precedent. Now, you can reinterpret precedent and make that argument, but you have to acknowledge the going consensus. Most people think of this case as meaning that separate but equal, not a great idea. But I say it is one. You see? All right. Well, we can't sanction you for that. You'll just lose. But if you say the current state of the law is that separate but equal education for the races is in fact legal and desirable, they will sanction you for that.
Mm.
You have to acknowledge contrary authority, like the state of the law. That's
For example.
Yeah, and if you cite cases that are overruled, now sometimes if they're obscure cases, they'll say, I understand you did a very poor job, or you had a law clerk who did a very poor job in doing the research. I understand that sort of oversight, but it's sometimes a judgment call. Did they make a mistake, or are they just lying? And well, so that'll sometimes give you grounds to admonish a lawyer without sanctioning them.
Right.
But it's not good. It's embarrassing.
I happened to come across just now.
For normal people, it is. Yes.
This garbage piece from the editorial board of the New York Times that they just published today.
Yeah, a lot of people have been chattering about it. I haven't had a chance to read it. It sounds
fight
sucky.
Like our democracy depends on it.
I mean,
they say.
That's good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that part
pains
is nice.
us. We say this in sorrow and anger. It pains us to write these words.
All right.
Whatever our policy difference with other modern presidents, every one of them fundamentally believed in democracy. The patriotic response is to oppose Mr. Trump, but do it soberly. Do it strategically.
Who's doing
not
it drunk?
Reflexively, not performatively.
I see. I don't see.
You have to build a coalition. And you should start, this is the part that everybody's talking about. It should start with an acknowledgement that Mr. Trump is the legitimate president and many of his actions are legal.
No.
Well, F you. The courts say they're not.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean...
What the hell are you writing about that in a protest and dissent article for?
The Constitution
says
he's not.
What the hell is wrong with the New York Times?
Yeah, interesting. I've seen some great points made about it already. Others discussing it and saying, I don't recall anybody insisting that the Tea Party acknowledge Obama's legitimacy and that his health care plan might just work, and maybe they need to find some common ground with it, but 10 people have stood out on a street corner with a honk if you hate Obama sign. That we're going to cover. Yeah, figures. I don't know what to say.
He nonetheless
about it.
deserves criticism on these issues. Well, duh.
Well, thank you. I guess that's just the New York Times types trying to look so, and set themselves apart from the, set themselves apart from
the rabble
everybody.
Yells and screams and does performative stuff, but
including...
who have to please our Republican owners just have to, be sober and as sober as a judge angry at the Trump administration telling the government that the lawyers are lying in court.
By the way,
right?
you can be drunk and still do that. You don't have to really be sober as a judge.
But I'm saying,
to see
if you're
problems.
telling us that we have to be sober, we have to be rational, we have to be measured, just like the judges.
Yeah.
You guys are lying outright, and you're deliberately doing this in bad faith. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not me. It's the judges. I'm just...
We have lawyers who handle this. Yeah, it's possible. I suppose in their own defense, they would say, well, what I'm trying to set myself apart from is not crazy leftists who hate Trump so much as we want to differentiate ourselves from the lunatics who spent the Biden years insisting that Biden had stolen the election. We're not like them. We think they, too, should have acknowledged the legitimacy of Biden's presidency. Well, that's not the context we're working in anymore. And if you want to say that, say it. It's only a few more words. I think more people are probably interpreting it as saying, oh, you're admonishing current protesters of the Trump regime. And,
this is the usual, you really should protest, just not that way.
Yeah, right. And once again, you've done it wrong. Don't kneel, don't stand on the sidewalk.
Let's spend the time talking about what you did wrong rather than what Trump is doing wrong.
Yes.
Because it's important to point out we have to be perfect, and he doesn't.
Lots of great critiques already circulating about it because it was easy because it was terrible, but it's not easy to put it eloquently as so many have been doing on social media this morning. So good job. Yeah, right. Good eye. That's a hot topic this morning.
Well, I agree.
Yeah. There's evidence by your having brought it up at this point. Okay.
I'm scanning an article here by Jay Ansley claiming that Democrats can win over young Trump voters, and here's how.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Every time I read one of these, here's how. I say, well, it's really hard, but this is what you need.
And
to
usually
do.
the how isn't even in there. They just
Right.
say that in the headline anyway, so you'll read it. Yeah, how? Does
How?
it say?
No,
Oh,
I
see,
don't know.
I knew it.
Gotten it
They're winnable. Here's how. Convince
yet.
them.
It's in the Washington Post.
All right.
Democrats must embrace the virtues and benefits of clean energy and climate change. Again.
Yeah, we're good on that, I think.
Right. Young voters have expressed similar frustration in focus groups about the overlapping crises, cost of living, climate crisis, political dysfunction. So let's concentrate on climate crisis because that's my thing. And the spiraling
it's
cost of
Jay
living, I'll
Inslee.
just mention in passing, which is the thing that got Trump elected and which is the thing that's dropping him in the polls.
Yeah.
Okay, you got all of that?
Yep, Jay Inslee, who was fine governor of Washington.
Look, I'm into like protecting the environment.
And may even be a good presidential
people
candidate.
don't vote on that as their first concern. If they did, Trump wouldn't be president. Republicans wouldn't be in the Senate as the majority party.
I think this is I'm thinking about running for president. My advisors tell me you're gonna want to be one of the moderate guys. You want to occupy the moderate lane. You got great credentials on the environment, and now you need to introduce yourself to the normies. Go do this op-ed, and I guess it's a kitchen table thing. Yeah, just do the kitchen table thing, but then don't do a podcast interviewing Stephen Miller. Okay.
Right. Here's another Stephen Scalise.
Oh, yeah.
He says House is on track for $1.5 trillion in cuts. Scalise says he's confident moderates will accept Medicaid changes for expansion populations. We've been meeting with all of our members, but especially our most vulnerable, yada, yada. These cuts, by the way, would lead to millions of people losing their health care coverage.
258
And moderates like Mike Lawler at that town meeting he went to said, I will never support some. Well, of course you will. You're a liar.
Yeah.
Because you talk moderate, but you vote conservative.
Yeah, I did see something in the last day or so that Trump was hinting that he might switch directions and say, geez, I don't know if I want to be responsible for kicking so many people off of Medicaid, though he hedged a little bit too. But I mean, the ideal situation for all of this would be for the Republicans in the House to stick their necks out on massive cuts to Medicaid, only to have Trump chicken out and veto the thing. But these guys are too late. They've already been on record voting in favor of this terrible thing. The old BTU move that they did in the early 90s well, I don't know if everybody remembers that, but there was proposing a BTU tax on energy consumption.
On thermal units.
Yeah,
right.
and not even American thermal units at that. British ones.
Right.
Outrageous.
Bavarian ones. So I just sent you a clip. It's at the bottom of the meeting.
Oh, yes.
Chat. It's only 15 seconds.
By the time I get it,
I haven't heard it yet, but I want to hear it because it's Jesse Waters talking about why the first 100 days is the best thing since sliced bread.
Because of 100. Yeah, all right. Let's see. It's gonna take a second to load up. And
so it's Spencer Hockeyman, and this is Jesse Waters bloviating. But luckily, it's only 15 seconds, and I just want to see what he has to say.
Yeah. However,
hear what he has to say if you want to be technical
20
about
seconds to. Let me try reloading this thing. It's just not. Doesn't want to.
I like making David work.
There. Yeah, well, it's not me. Okay, here we go.
But don't try this at home, folks, because unless you're a
professional. I think now, the procedure. Then I have to stop, and then I have to turn up the sound on it. Jesse Waters, repugnant. The Spencer Hakimian.
Hakimian.
All right. Yeah, with just a bunch of question marks. Unsure what the hell Waters means here. All right.
He said that. That's why I want to see what he has to say.
All right, let's see.
There's no doctor checking to see if he has Alzheimer's.
Whoops.
The vice president's not lining up judges to swear in case the president drops dead. The vice president's doing what he should be doing, trying to steal Greenland. And so right now we're in a really good place.
I don't know what that means either.
Do you know what that means?
Not exactly. I guess he's trying to make excuses for why J.D. Vance is sitting at a cabinet meeting, not really doing anything and babbling a little bit. I think he threw out some random praise for Trump, but I forget Vance himself said something baffling at the cabinet meeting, but this is just worse.
He didn't refer to nattering nabobs of negativism.
No, I don't think so. So he's doing what he should be doing, which is to say nothing. You sit there and wait. Sentence. But I don't know. So what? There's nobody examining the president.
I mean, we've
for
had bad
Alzheimer's
vice presidents in the past, but he's one of them.
Yeah, I really don't know. The only other commentary I saw on what he did at the cabinet meeting was that he was wearing more eyeliner than Pam Bondi, somebody said, which is possible. But
entirely.
I don't know what Waters is getting at here either. So that's a good question. I hope Spencer has some idea of, well, I mean, not with all those question marks in the comments, he's not going to figure it out. I don't know. I don't know. Jesse Waters is a little scramble-brained as well, so.
Yep.
All right, well, did that help you at all? Hearing it?
No, I think that Greenland is still on their mind, and that's another failure. But somehow or other, that's typical, MAGA garbage.
I guess so.
Propaganda. Let's take something that failed and make it into something that succeeded. You notice he doesn't talk about the Houthis very much anymore.
No, not much.
That's because that's been another failure.
Yeah, they had a...
they didn't open the sea lanes. That was the whole point.
But if they did, they closed them again by dropping an airplane accidentally off the...
Well, apparently they dropped the airplane accidentally because that aircraft carrier had to take a hard right because it was being targeted by a drone. Which is bad because, first of all, that means they haven't won.
Yeah.
And secondly, it means that the drones are getting closer to the actual ships. That's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing good. There's no win there with the Houthis, so that's why they're not talking about it.
I guess. Yeah, all right, that's pretty wild. So the ship turned fast and the airplane fell off the deck and took its tow truck with it somehow. I don't know what they call the tow truck. I can't. It's magazine clip. Don't tell me I can't talk about it. The airplane fell off. It is an airplane, right?
Well,
yes.
Well, whatever it is, it's in the ocean, so
right.
Not good, and they're not getting it back.
Right.
Cook Political Report just released this, taking into consideration the political environment, Democratic enthusiasm, and private polling. We are shifting the Virginia governor's race from toss-up to Democratic.
Nice. Okay. Good. It should have been there anyway, given who the candidates are likely to be. But since we haven't settled it yet,
Well, hasn't been enough polling for them to say it. And they're very conservative in the sense that it takes a lot to move them.
Yeah, I guess.
They're good, but they're very slow to react on purpose.
Yeah, the rest of us don't have to worry about that. And you say, well, Winsome Sears or Abigail Spanberger. Well, okay.
Well, the reason it was toss-up was the absence of early polling and the uncertainty of the political climate before Trump took office. That's when they said toss-up.
Yet he has now taken office.
And
it's 100 days since they did. And if you haven't polled Virginia, that's really your fault. But okay. No, they don't have the data.
Has a clear money advantage. She has history on her side, given that the party out of the White House typically has been rewarded in the off-year Virginia contests.
Not insane, also. That's in there.
Yeah. Winston Earl Sears, the lieutenant governor, hopes to benefit from term-limited Glenn Youngkin's enduring popularity.
Yeah, me too.
That's why they moved it to lean Democrat.
Yeah, okay. I hope to benefit from my colony on Pluto.
Here's a shocker. As we see it, with 6 months to go, the race is shaping up to be more about Trump than Youngkin's successes. Just like the Canadian election. How do you like that?
Yeah. Now, Youngkin's what's now?
His successes, they call it.
Successes.
One GOP source told us polling shows Trump's approval rating in Virginia underwater by 20 points. He lost by nearly 6 points last election, an improvement from his 10-point loss in 2020.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So there was some excitement among the farmers for Trump crowd. They thought they'd get another check. They came out and supported him, but 6 points is a walloping in any telling of the story. So, yeah, I guess maybe he thinks, well, I cut it down from 10, so maybe next time I'll lose by 2, maybe.
Right.
4 points each time.
So part of the problem for Winston Earl Sears is that she's not well known outside of her base.
Yep. She's not well known at all.
A bigger problem is when she is well known outside of her base, but that's coming.
Right. Right. She's well, we'll learn a lot more about her, and
right.
then
The one I'm familiar with is that clip where she's speaking to an audience and says, "How many here have ever lost a job?" So yeah, you're federal workers. You lose a job, no big deal. You just go get another one.
Sure. With another
Oh,
federal
you mean
government.
it's not unusual? There's a responding yes. So she says, "You mean it's not unusual? It happens to everybody all the time." Okay. Media's making out to be a big thing.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why, she says.
Oh, well, perhaps she'll learn why somewhere on the trail when someone who's lost a job tells her.
Right. So Democrats have already been using those words on billboards along I-64 and in digital ads. And the Republicans will privately acknowledge that the layoffs are damaging and could juice an already fired up Democratic base. So that makes me think we're talking about, dare I say it, Northern Virginia.
Yes, I imagine
where a lot of the votes
very
are.
important. But yeah, right. True, and that's it's not insurmountable if you're willing to bank on turning out infrequent voters in southern and southwestern Virginia, but that's a demographic that isn't frequently enthusiastic about the kind of candidate they're running this time.
Well,
likely.
Speaking of the kind of candidate they're running this time, have you talked at all about the lieutenant governor stuff?
This next time around? No, I haven't.
Okay, there's a conservative radio host named John Reed, R-E-I-D.
Okay.
Boo, he's the de facto GOP nominee for lieutenant governor. He's
Is that right?
awful on the issues.
I'm sure.
Hard right MAGA. He also happens to be gay.
All right.
This is a problem for Republican religious right voters, as we used to call them.
Yes. Right. Okay. So ultra-conservative rural
So they were holding their nose and they
voters.
were going to go with him.
Isn't that something?
And then it turns out lewd photos surface from an account linked to John Reed, who's openly gay.
Yes.
He denies it has anything to do with him. And they may or may not. I have no knowledge.
They're not sure about what he's denying. That's him in the pictures. Is that what this is?
He's denying the account belongs to him, even though it has his name and it's associated
I see.
With him.
And maybe he's not even in the pictures. Just there were some lewd pictures.
No, he's not
of
in the
someone.
pictures.
Okay,
it's not him.
He just likes lewdness. Well,
yes.
Okay. Me
too.
So
Glenn Youngkin heard about it and demanded that Reed pull out of the race.
Glenn Youngkin, that's not moderate.
And Reed refused.
Ooh.
And that's the current state of that race.
I don't even know this.
I mentioned by opening, again, you have the religious right voters in Virginia who are a strong contingent within the Republican Party, already holding their nose about whether to vote for this guy.
Huh.
Now this comes, nobody knows what to think. Nobody knows if it's real or not. Reed denied he made the post, although it was from a social media handle Reed has often used.
Yeah.
Youngkin called for Reed to withdraw. Earl Sears said that it was his decision alone. Virginia Republican sources we talked to doubted the controversy, if he remains on the ticket, would hurt the governor race, Earl Sears, but they acknowledge it's certainly not helpful.
Yeah, again.
So that's all in the background. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just telling you, if you're having a fight with your supposedly popular governor of your own party about whether you should even be on the ticket, that's not a good place to start from.
It's not. So, I have my doubts about their ability to motivate infrequent, rural, ultra-conservative, white voters.
This will do it. This will get their attention.
Right, with the black woman, gay, lewd picture guy ticket. I'm just saying that if it was the Democratic ticket, everyone would be writing op-eds about how obviously risky the strategy was. Yeah. But somehow, something, and by the way, it's not DEI, so go screw yourself. I don't know what to tell you. All right. Good luck to them, by which I mean bad luck to them.
I always like talking about Virginia politics.
Yeah,
like,
thanks for telling me because
Connecticut politics is pretty boring. So.
Well, I'll tell you about it. They love nutmeg. I am told.
Just in case you hear anything, you heard it here first.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Well, look, this will make its way. It'll percolate up at some point. I might have, had I learned it, I might have ignored it just because most people really, okay, it's a year away. Don't worry about it. Not a year.
And it's the lieutenant governor.
Right.
It's not the,
But this is
the
exciting.
Marquee race. The marquee race is
Winston
Earl Sears is not quite as bad as that guy in North Carolina, but almost as bad.
Yeah. She's pretty awful. She's benefited from the relative obscurity of the lieutenant governor's seat,
as John Reed might.
Right. True. So be careful. All right. Well, what can I tell you? It's a bad sign that they're out there persecuting everybody else, but figure it's okay if I personally am gay openly. That's okay. It's bad news that they don't recognize, but they hate empathy. So, all right, another bad example, and then setting another bad example for everyone, including reactionary rural Republicans, the 3 R's. All right, whatever. We'll keep an eye on it, and it's time for the weekend for you, pretty much. We have one more. This is our last visit for the first visit for the month.
You have to go to work tomorrow, but I don't. I have the day off.
That's right.
I won't speak to you till Monday.
Okay.
Where I'll try to gather 4 days worth of material and only have 15 minutes to talk about.
Right, and then but then we'll be able to anticipate an exciting Wednesday and Thursday. For
some reason, news happens on Tuesday. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Probably because Congress comes back. They don't work Mondays, do they?
Not in D.C. they don't. And if they don't work in D.C., then newspapers don't cover it. Right. Yeah. Unless if it's video of them having a town hall and being booed, but that usually happens on the weekends.
Right.
All right. Well, very good.
So again, I'll leave you with this. Glenn Kessler from the Washington Post warns us: here comes the Trump bait and switch. Now that the economy's down.
Yeah.
So we shall see.
Sure. Right. Blaming it all on Biden. I guess we knew that was coming. But yeah, more to be mined from the cabinet meeting, I'm sure, and the war on Christmas, etc., that he's declared. How well. All right. Well, I wonder how many dolls Ivanka has these days. I don't know. She's not buying her dolls anymore, I'm sure, but still. All right. Thanks, Greg. We'll catch up with you next week. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's just check in on some input that we had via social media during the previous 2 segments. Let's see. Bill in Portland, Maine, listening along. Hi, Bill. How you doing? Noting that sub-deals is probably their new speak for having concepts of a plan. That could probably be it, right? We didn't make deals yet, but we have sub-deals. That is, that we know what we would like to see in a deal. It's just one small problem. 50% of the parties to this deal are already inked on this deal. It's just the other one, but 1 out of 2 ain't bad. So maybe that's what they mean by a sub-deal. Not quite a deal yet. The other possibility, of course, is like I said, well, we have a deal with France about brie, but we also have a deal with France about, I don't know, I'm at a loss now. I'm not a cheese person. Another kind of cheese. You name it. You pick it. And wine. But which kind of wine? Right. So we have a champagne deal, but only on the things that come from the Champagne region. And likewise, various other things. So we have 200 different sub-deals about different wines and cheeses from France, and that's basically it. It could mean anything. Also, by the way, one other suggestion I would just throw out there, if sub means lie, there's that possibility. There are 200 different lies, I will tell you, about deals that we don't have that, I would like you to print as deals instead. Just concentrate on the deal part, less on the sub part. Let's see. Also, when it came to Jesse Waters, Mighty OCD this doesn't really clear anything up, but it is a valid observation. Jesse Waters is as dumb as dirt and just thinks he was being funny. That's probably the best interpretation of what it is that he was saying. I just don't even really understand what he was saying it about. And there I'm guessing, right? J.D. Vance did say something at the cabinet meeting. It was also interesting that Greg was reading us a report from one of the papers describing Elon Musk as having been seated at at the end of a large conference table in the West Wing of the White House, which, most frequently when that happens and all of the cabinet secretaries sit around this large table, it's the cabinet room and it's a cabinet meeting. But they were saying, but Elon Musk is there and he's talking and he's not a member of the cabinet. So it was interesting. They reframed it. This is a different thing, a different large conference table that the cabinet was seated at, but also him. It's not a cabinet meeting. He was also there, by the way. Speaking of Jesse Waters and other dumb right-wing weirdos trying to be funny, right? The big yuckity yuck from Elon Musk, who loves the idea that he wants everybody to think he's got a sense of humor. And everybody does think that they have a sense of humor, but they really don't in every case. And so, anyway, the big laugh line for Elon was, people say I wear a lot of hats in this administration. And if you noticed, he was wearing 2 hats. You see? He said, even my hat has a hat. I wear so many hats. Even my hat has a hat. Which I guess, is, I guess you could qualify that as a low-end dad joke. And he's got, 357 children. So I suppose he's going to be trying to make dad jokes at some point, somewhere along the line. So that was the thing. So he had his black, dark MAGA hat on, I guess. And then on top of it, he had put on a red hat that said, instead of Make America Great Again, it said Gulf of America on it, I think. And isn't that great? He's making jokes. There's another observation that he offers us, by the way, about, let's see, that's why Hegseth is, I guess, we'll say saber rattling. He says talking shit at Iran again. I didn't even realize that was happening. They use that instead, and it's the whole Rumsfeldian thing about real targets. They want, what is this? No, they want video of buildings and stuff blowing up, not tents. Is that what? When we were talking about the Houthis, etc. And so, okay, I guess they haven't been blowing anything up that looked cool lately. So they're talking about Iran instead, because then people will worry about that and not think about them blowing up dumb stuff in the desert that doesn't matter in terms of military value. But I, even as I'm saying it, I'm realizing, well, dumb stuff in the desert, that's people, and they do matter. Remember, all lives matter? Well, not Houthi lives, apparently. So, yeah, they're blowing up targets of no value in terms of actual military gaining military superiority over the Houthis. 1, we already had it. 2, this isn't doing anything. This is just killing civilians in the desert for no reason except to look cool. And that's what we would call a horrific war crime. So, I guess that could be what's going on and what explains, I don't know, most of the saber rattling. I had missed even the saber rattling about Iran. All right, well, here's what I had selected for reporting. 1, just to play catch up here, U.S. and Ukraine, it is claimed by ABC News, and I'm not certain whether or not this is a real and true thing. U.S. and Ukraine sign mineral resources agreement, and I had just seen the other day circulating a interesting political cartoon taking a shot at that, saying, imminent signing of the Ukraine minerals deal anytime now. I think it was just 24 hours ago or so. Somebody using an old, what was that character's name there? from The Watchmen, who's sitting on Mars. Okay. I'm not much of a fan of the show, so Dr. Manhattan, there we go. Sitting on Mars, contemplating the nothingness. The first panel being it's February and the U.S.-Ukrainian minerals deal will be signed later today. It is March and the U.S.-Ukrainian minerals deal will be signed later today. It is April and the U.S.-Ukrainian minerals deal will be signed later today. Like Infrastructure Week, the U.S.-Ukraine minerals deal was always imminent and yet never showed up. Well, the claim in ABC News is that it in fact has happened. Besant says it signals Russia that Trump is committed to a peace process, i.e., splitting Ukraine in half with the Russians like they did with Poland at the outset of World War II, except it wasn't they. We weren't the part of the they that time. The other party to Russia's scheming there was Nazi Germany. But, no parallels to be drawn there. Okay, this is reported by ABC News by Alexei Shemysky, maybe P-S-H Pshaw, P-S-H-E-M-Y-S-K-I-Y. So Pshemsky. How about that? Alexei Pshemsky. I don't know whether they pronounce the P or not. But also another Eastern European name here, Natalia Popova. I'm hoping I've got the correct pronunciation and emphasis there. And Michelle Stoddart. That's the easy one of the gang. Apologies to those of you at ABC News, but hopefully, well, I don't know. I can't even keep people straight. Are you the ones currently surrendering to Trump in one of the fake lawsuits? I think probably. Maybe you already did, ABC News. All right. Well, anyway, hard to keep track now. CBS, I think, is the one on the hook at the moment. The U.S. and Ukraine have signed the deal to create the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. The long-awaited deal that gives the U.S. rights to Ukrainian rare earth minerals, both sides announced Wednesday. This agreement signals clearly to Russia that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent lied, I guess, in a press release. President Trump envisioned this partnership between the American people and the Ukrainian people to show both sides' commitment to lasting peace and prosperity in Ukraine. And to be clear, no state or person who financed or supplied the Russian war machine will be allowed to benefit from the reconstruction of Ukraine, unless we let them. Later, I guess. Ukrainian Minister of Economy Yulia, oh my goodness, why am I even trying? Svirodenko is my best guess. Svirodenko. It's not really all that hard if you just make some of these Y's into I's. I guess, but there's lots of Y's in the Ukrainian transliterations. Yulia Svirodenko, that's economy minister there, posted on Twitter, together with the United States, we are creating the fund that will attract global investment into our country. In a video discussing the deal posted on Twitter, that now calls itself X, Bessent gave more details about the deal. Is that really true? Did they give more details about the deal, or did you just say more things in relation to the deal? Not really. Let's see. Both sides were ready to sign an agreement on critical minerals and other resources earlier, but the U.S. said it wanted the main minerals resources agreement signed and the creation of an investment fund document signed at the same time. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal and a source in the Ukrainian president's office, that's Zelensky, said Ukraine had planned to separate the signing dates as the creation of the fund agreement was still being finalized, the source added. Now they'll be rushing to finish it, the source said, which means they'll probably make some mistakes with it. Ukraine said it was ready to sign, but ran into last-minute snag when the U.S. requested it sign both the Mineral Resources Agreement and the Investment Fund Agreement at the same time. The U.S. refuted that series of events. Refuted? During President Trump's cabinet meeting on Wednesday, saying it was ready to sign the agreement, but the Ukrainians decided on Tuesday night to make some last-minute changes. Bessent said, our side is ready to sign. When asked what was changed, Bessent said there have been no changes on our side. Yeah, but what changed? Trump then put the mineral resources agreement into, quote, context. That they quoted it. That says into, quote, context, talking about the amount of money the U.S. had given Ukraine's war effort. But he seemed optimistic about the prospect of the agreement coming together. Quote, but we haven't really seen the fruits of that deal yet. I suspect we will, Trump said. Well, he haven't signed it yet. And at the time, Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky were originally set to sign the minerals deal in late February, but the plan was derailed following a tense exchange between the two men in the Oval Office. So I don't know what the details are. They kept saying that more details were offered on Twitter, but they weren't. And we checked in a few days ago at the original agreement is horrific for Ukraine, just in terms of giving over control of any disagreements between the two countries would be settled by a 5-person board, of which the United States named 3 members. And you know how they use a bare majority, the Republicans. So, I mean, best I can hope for Ukraine is that they may be thinking, well, we're up against the wall in this situation. We have to sign this thing if we have any hope of stretching out the conflict with the Russians such that we are ever victorious in this thing. And we'll sign anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to actually honor it. I mean, that's a possibility. And I mean, it may be that for the time being, they consider one of the deprivations of war is that they may have to send the profits from their rare earth minerals mining overseas, or at least the control over those funds overseas to the Americans, to be stolen by Trump personally and the Trump administration flunkies. If they can survive the war and reclaim sovereignty over their minerals and the revenue from them later on, then I guess they probably will. If they can drive the Russians from their territory, settle the war that way, then I would say, by the way, if you're on the ground as an American attempting to enforce the minerals agreement, your life will be in danger. I'm just putting that out there. They won't be happy about honoring the terms of this agreement. Honorable people, but they know they're dealing with dishonorable ones. I would say that would be a highly dangerous situation if you were one of the people trying to actually extract and keep hold of this mineral wealth, stealing the mineral wealth of a at that point free and independent and safe Ukraine. I think they probably, it's not like they're going to just decommission all their weapons at the end of the war, if there ever is one, with Russia. I think they'll just turn them elsewhere. So I wouldn't take that job if I were you. All right. Let's see. Other things that we have put aside. This might be of some interest. I saw a Blue Sky posting thread from Senator Chris Murphy. So I'll tell you now about Connecticut politics. Greg did you the favor of telling you about Virginia politics. Chris Murphy last night posting videos of himself on the Senate floor speaking to, an important topic. He says here, I went to the Senate floor to tell a story about Trump's first 100 days, a story of daily norm-shattering corruption. And it is that story. I laid out 40 different corrupt acts. Each one alone could have taken down previous presidents. And now he offers us a thread of his speech. People need to know this story. I agree. And therefore, I'll help him share it with you if you haven't seen it yourself. First up, we did touch on this one a little bit yesterday. There's more to read from the New York Times article about the Trump crypto scam, the Trump crypto coin, the biggest scandal in the history of the American presidency. And this is just touching on highlights, just naming all of the scandals. We'll see if there are any that we need to do more background discussion on, and that we really do need to finish talking about the details that the New York Times uncovered in its look at the crypto grift. But for now, second one up in his chronicling of Trump crimes, Trump ends enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act so that his staff can more easily get paid on the side by foreign governments and companies seeking to bribe the Trump administration. Everybody who was in trouble after the first Trump administration and during the first Trump administration was in trouble on a FARA Act violation. They neglected to, and in some cases just simply made the decision not to tell the American public who was paying them off, which foreign governments were they taking bribes from. And I know it seems kind of dumb that there would be a law that they have to declare their bribes. Well, it's one of those laws aimed at actually stopping those bribes. Why would I tell anybody about the bribes I'm taking? Well, the hope was that you wouldn't be taking any bribes because then you'd be in trouble. But okay, you took the bribes anyway, so we can nail you on the bribes, and we can nail you on failing to tell us about it too. Anyway, not anymore. Now it's just down to bribery, which we also won't be prosecuting our own people for. Number 4 in this tweet thread here, but number 3 in terms of the crimes he's chronicling. The most brazen abuse of prosecutorial power in a generation. The quid pro quo with Mayor Eric Adams. Next up, Trump's new U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. begins his campaign of harassment against Trump and Musk critics. DOJ is now just doing full-time political enforcement for Trump. We've certainly been on that beat. Next, Trump starts selling meetings with him to CEOs for $5 million apiece. That's not even the Trump Gold Card one. That's just something different, I guess. $5 million, I'll meet with you, the CEO of your company. I don't know if I'm 100% clear on that one, but it sounds familiar. Trump turns the White House into a Tesla showroom to make clear he will boost the profit of any CEO who collaborates with him. I remember that. We've talked about that one. Next, Trump thinks he can get away with anything. He starts selling access to the White House for people who buy his crypto coin. That's true too, but I would have wrapped that one up with the crypto. I guess the fact that he has a crypto coin is corruption in itself, and one example of how he's using it is another in this list of 40 impeachable crimes. Trump launches a new private club in D.C. with a $500,000 buy-in to allow corporations and oligarchs the chance to pay money to have access to Trump's inner circle. That's true as well, and I think, I just did come across a story about that one. I think when I was looking at more stories about that other weird club and restaurant that the young MAGA crowd was hanging out at, Butterworth's, but I think Don Jr. has to do something with this launch of this other Trump DC private club, about which we haven't talked, I don't think. Let's see. And he doesn't name it here, but let's see. Yeah, okay. Right. And it has a dumb name as well. I can grab, we'll do the Fox 5 DC, the local Fox affiliate here has their own story about it here. Executive Branch is the name of the thing. The new private club, co-founded by Donald Trump Jr., heads to DC. Okay, says Sylvia, Mfofe, maybe? Mphofe. Best guessed at Sylvia's last name here. We'll just do the bullet points on this one so we can move on with Chris Murphy's compilation of Trump crimes. A new private membership club is heading to Georgetown area of D.C., co-founded by Donald Trump Jr., charging $500,000 membership fee. I mean, it's pretty naked corruption there. And I guess, the standard, the old standby line applies here. Imagine for a second Hunter Biden starting a club that you paid $500,000 to get into. The Executive Branch is the name of it, set to open in the next month. 2 weeks, I guess. Already has a wait list, according to reporters. So there you have it. This is an ultra-exclusive members-only club co-founded by Donald Trump Jr. You've heard the story. This all apparently according to Politico's reporting. By the way, Trump Jr., of course, being a co-owner. Who are the other co-owners? Investment banker Omid Malik, who totally sounds, like a waspy rural MAGA voter. I don't know. But also involved Zach and Alex Witkoff, both sons of Steve Witkoff, the U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, about whom we have yet more information. Of course, Zach Witkoff already wrapped up in the crypto scam as it is, but Alex, I guess, I don't know. Did he miss out on the crypto scam and he's getting in on this one instead? According to reports, the club held a launch party on Saturday night. By the way, nothing trumps, as a family, love better than a launch party. You don't have to actually launch the thing, but the launch party is what they're there for. Trump Vodka had some of the splashiest, craziest, and by the way, exploitative of underage nakedness launch parties of any of his products. You remember that one from a while ago. This one we revealed during the first Trump campaign, that the Trump Vodka Super Bowl party back in like 2008 or whatever, that the vodka was being served by waitresses, basically topless waitresses in gold body paint with the Trump Vodka logo painted on them. And that, not all of them had attained the age of majority at the time, just put things bluntly. Anyway, executive branch is set to open sometime next month. But that's just one of many crimes and corruptions that Chris Murphy was compiling, and now you're up to date on that one. Next up, Chris Murphy reminds us these are just a small handful of the dozens of mind-blowingly corrupt acts in Trump's first 100 days, and this corruption is a big part of the reason his approval ratings are cratering. The American people refuse to let him normalize this level of graft, the alternative spelling of grift. Are they not the same thing entirely? Graft and grift, we use them interchangeably here, but anyway, that's actually it. He doesn't go through the other 40, I don't think, in this chain, unless if I scroll down, I'll discover more. But it gives you some idea of how Chris Murphy spent his evening. Anyway, I'd love to get the list of the rest of them just to make sure that we got them all on record. And the one we didn't know anything about, at least we've cleared up the record on that. Okay, so thanks again there to Chris Murphy for highlighting those stories, even if we didn't get around to all 40 of them. Speaking of the other stories, we might as well just try and get some of these on the record. Steve Witkoff got some unusual attention, I think, from the New York Post, usually a fairly pro-Trump and more so than the Wall Street Journal. A Rupert Murdoch production, usually, doing their best to boost Trump and Trump toadies. And yet, in this case, and this is, I guess, what makes this story so interesting, they're not on the Steve Witkoff train for some reason. Here is a story by Caitlin, what's her name? Doornbos, maybe? Doornbos. By the way, I don't know where that comes from, Doornbos, but I have I got questions. Anyway, here's the headline. Steve Witkoff shouldn't be leading Iran or Russia negotiations, allies and insiders say, and I understand that it's put in some stronger terms in the body of the piece. President Trump's special envoy in the Middle East, former real estate attorney and investor Steve Witkoff, has left administration insiders distressed by his approach to negotiating with two of America's greatest adversaries, if you prefer. Witkoff, who has become Trump's de facto personal ambassador to Russian President Vladimir Putin, in addition to taking on the Middle East portfolio, because I love how he just tosses that to anybody. Take care of the Middle East, the whole thing. Takes part in high-level meetings alone, and is said to have even occasionally leaned on Kremlin translators in a break with long-standing diplomatic procedure, multiple sources told the Post. Again, just to be clear about what they're saying, is he goes into meetings with Putin without any assistance, any staff, or even a translator. But if he needs a translator, the Kremlin says, we give you a translator. Translate for him. You tell him what I said. And Witkoff, as an ambassador for the United States, says, that's fine. I'll totally accept that. That is a break with long-standing practice. Anyway, ahead of Witkoff's most recent meeting with Putin this past Friday, the New York native greeted the Kremlin tyrant like an old friend, with no sign of the usual coterie of advisors, experts, and military officers who typically accompany U.S. officials conducting negotiations. So it's a little bit odd, to say the least. More on this after the break. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kegrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's have a look, continuing with the New York Post discussion of Steve Witkoff's abilities and proclivities in dealing with Russian President Putin in particular on behalf of the United States, just kind of going in there solo and using whatever translator the Kremlin provides him with. It's interesting. To say the least, although at that point, there's very little reason to, I guess, given how obsequious he's been to Putin this whole time, and how compliant Trump usually is with Putin's demands. I don't know how much additional benefit there is in having the Kremlin's translator be there. I mean, unless we think the Kremlin's translator is telling Witkoff that the terms of the deal he's making are more advantageous to the United States than they really are, and then they're sneaking more stuff in later. But I don't know that Trump wouldn't have agreed to it anyway. But it's certainly odd. Putin himself, it says, did not attend Friday's meeting solo, but was instead accompanied by aide Yuri Ushakov and the head of Moscow's Sovereign Wealth Fund, Kirill Dmitriev. So, okay, he brought a team, but Witkoff didn't. Anybody engaging in these kinds of talks with Putin would benefit from having experienced Russia hands on his or her team and bringing them along to meetings with the Kremlin. John Hardy, director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Russia program, said of Witkoff's move, and I mean that's underplaying it by far, right? This is sheer idiocy. There's no reason in the world for anybody, even the most experienced diplomat in the world, to handle these negotiations solo, and there's certainly no reason in the world to think Steve Witkoff is the one exception to this. And in fact, it is put more pointedly than that. A member of Trump's first administration was more succinct. We won't say who, because they're about to tell you. Nice guy about Witkoff, but a bumbling effing idiot. This person said of Witkoff, he should not be doing this alone. Nobody should be doing it alone, much less the fact that, he's also a bumbling effing idiot. All right. Now, here's an interesting header for the next section here. Maybe that's just me getting duped. Uh-oh. Heralded by his allies as a fierce negotiator, Witkoff would appear to have plenty on his plate without getting involved in Europe's worst conflict since World War II. In his role as Middle East Special Envoy, Witkoff has tried to negotiate a ceasefire and a hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas, as well as a revised agreement with Iran over its nuclear weapons program. Because why not? What the hell? Iran is totally Middle East, right? It's not. It's nearby, certainly, but it's certainly in the MAGA view of things. That's Middle East, right? They're all Muslims or something. Well, that's Asia. But okay. Witkoff's tenure got off on the right foot after he helped broker a 2-month pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas that took effect the day before Trump was sworn in. But the envoy's attempt, and that may be too much credit there, the envoy's attempt to extend the ceasefire went badly. On March 12th, Witkoff left meetings with Hamas representatives in Qatar, believing he had a deal in principle. But guess what? Nope. The ceasefire would be extended another month, with the terror group releasing 5 living hostages in exchange for a larger number of Palestinian prisoners. 2 days later, Hamas countered. It would release 1 living U.S. hostage taken in the October 7th, 2023 attack, along with the bodies of 4 others. Witkoff turned down the offer out of hand, and the ceasefire collapsed 4 days later. I thought we had an acceptable deal, a befuddled-sounding Witkoff told Fox News Sunday on March 23rd. I even thought we had an approval from Hamas. Maybe that's just me getting duped. I thought we were there, and evidently we weren't. Oh, really? Thanks. While many Israelis appreciate Witkoff's efforts, his lack of diplomatic experience is seen as clouding his judgment. His assumption that actors like Hamas or Iran are primarily motivated by a desire to live and can therefore be reasoned with through direct engagement reflects a dangerous misunderstanding of their long-term ideological goals, said Shiri Fine-Grossman, former head of regional affairs at the Israel National Security Council. We have to understand our enemies through their lens, not ours. Hamas and Iran are autocratic regimes driven by deep-rooted ideologies, not short-term interests. Well, that's where we differ. We are an autocratic regime driven by deep-rooted ideologies and short-term interests. So you never know. Anyway, others fear Witkoff is being asked to take on too large of a role. Russia, Middle East, Iran, no demonstrable experience or expertise whatsoever, and wants no help. How does Witkoff divide his time with 2 very demanding negotiations? Asked Israeli security expert and Tel Aviv-based Institute for National Security Studies fellow Danny Citrinowicz. I think he's a good guy, but the Iran issue is so complex that I'm hoping he's bringing more people to the team. And in fact, he brings no one to his team. Because as of now, the Iranians might have the upper hand, given their vast knowledge in negotiations. When Trump took office on January 20th, he already had a special envoy for the Russia-Ukraine war, retired Army Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, an advisor to former Vice President Mike Pence during Trump's first term. But of course he hates him because of that. So by mid-March, Kellogg's job title was changed to Special Envoy for Ukraine from Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia. Witkoff, meanwhile, was named ambassador at large, given authority to negotiate an end to the Ukraine war with Moscow, but not Kiev, which remained Kellogg's purview. That's interesting. Kellogg's work has been fruitful, getting Kiev to sign on to a proposed ceasefire and hammering out an expected to be inked mineral rights deal that may or may not have been inked yesterday, according to the news, with the Trump administration, but having separate negotiators for each side is proving difficult to balance. It's actually quite dumb, don't you think? On April 24th, President Zelensky said he, Kellogg, and a European delegation had reached an acceptable peace proposal during talks in London before Trump announced a new arrangement that would recognize Crimea as Russian, which Moscow insists upon and Kyiv views as a red line. I wonder how they settled that if they allegedly made their deal last night. A challenge with the way President Trump split responsibilities between Witkoff and Kellogg, Hardy said, is that Witkoff, who's closer to Trump, relays the Kremlin's view to Trump, but has much more limited exposure to Kyiv's views. If Trump finally got serious about mediating an end to the war in Ukraine, he would appoint one person to talk to both sides, shuttle diplomacy, and preferably someone with some experience in diplomacy. Former U.S. Ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul posted on Twitter on Saturday. Witkoff acts as a mailman for Putin. He's not negotiating anything. Making matters worse, Russian media have picked up on a pattern of Witkoff parroting Putin, with state television announcers recently commenting that the American easily accepts Moscow's narratives, even when Russians don't. The most egregious example came during a March 21 interview with Tucker Carlson, when Witkoff repeated Kremlin talking points that the largest issue in negotiations was political and related to Moscow's annexing of these so-called 4 regions, while forgetting the names of the eastern oblasts at stake. They are, of course, Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, and this one I don't think I know, Zaporizhzhia. Oh my goodness, Zaporizhzhia. Oh my, you tell me. I've mangled that one like crazy. I have not even seen this one in print discussed. The other names I recognize, but Zapor, Zapor, IZH, Zaporizhzhia. My best attempt at that. Zaporizhzhia. Okay, sorry, apologies to the war-torn region, but, well, it's a difficult language to manage. Anyway, what does Witkoff have to say about them? He dismisses the whole thing. They're Russian-speaking, repeating a common excuse Putin gives to justify his assault on Ukraine. Well, they speak Russian, so we should own them. Well, maybe not. There have been referendums where the overwhelming majority of the people have indicated that they want to be under Russian rule, just like Greenland and Canada. But the envoy failed to acknowledge that Moscow either killed or drove out Ukrainian language speakers or ordered them to communicate only in Russian, which the Post and other outlets have confirmed on the ground, and that the referenda were conducted under the watchful eye of armed Kremlin troops. You'd think he might want to mention that. The Russians are de facto in control of these territories. The question is, will they be? Will the world acknowledge that those are Russian territories? Will Zelensky survive politically if he acknowledges this? This is the central issue of the conflict. Absolutely. And that is not Putin. That is our envoy. So you see what the problems are here. All right. Well, there's lots more going on with him. You should absolutely read this. It's a good critical view. And reminder, it's in the New York Post. So somebody in the administration has a knife out for him and is telling this stuff and feeding this stuff to the New York Post, and the Post feels safe in floating it. There's a whole other section about his confusion in negotiating with Iran. I just wanted to sort of put that on the record that, one, there are knives out for him, and two, connect that to the fact that his 2 sons are corruptly in business with the Trump family directly. So I imagine that, I don't know, I guess until they can extract the investment money from his kids, the Trump administration will be hanging on to Witkoff. And then I guess once they get the money, they can stab him in the back and throw him overboard. Maybe that's the plan. All right. Let's see. Other things to catch up on. There's still plenty to read about the crypto deals. But man, I guess other things to put on the record, and there are many. How about this one? Why don't we discuss this for a little bit? It always pays to check in with Charlie Savage. He's written at the New York Times about the legal efforts on behalf of the Trump administration to rewrite the constitutional order, basically. Can we just put it that way? Trump's maximalist assertion of presidential power tests the rule of law. You know, we've been on this subject for some days now. But to hear Charlie Savage put it this way, I think always worth doing. The United States has never seen an effort to expand presidential authority at the scale of Donald Trump's second term. All right, Charlie, take it away. Nearly every president has pushed the bounds of executive power to try to achieve something specific. True. And a handful of presidents who took office during a true national crisis, like, the Civil War or the depths of the Great Depression, swiftly made a series of legally aggressive moves to grapple with the challenges facing the country. But the sheer volume and intensity of the power grab President Trump has undertaken in the first 100 days of his second term, an assault on legal constraints untethered to any equivalent catastrophe, is unlike anything the United States has ever experienced. They are trying to do a moonshot on executive power, said someone who's usually protective of those power grabs, Jack Goldsmith, a Harvard Law School professor and senior Justice Department official in the George W. Bush administration. The rule of law in the United States has been traditionally understood to use checks and balances to prevent too much concentration of arbitrary executive power. But the maximalist cascade in the early days of Trump's second term is testing the fundamental structures of American democracy in a way that has never been seen before. Trump would really appreciate that version of the expression, like they've never seen before. Trump, pursuing a confrontational style of presidential politics, has unleashed an assault on counterweights to his authority, attacking judges, sidelining Congress's role in making decisions about taxing and spending, steamrollering internal limits on the executive branch, and using the levers of government to try to force outside centers of power like law firms and universities to submit to his will. Akil Reed Amar, a Yale Law School professor, said the broader picture was of an administration that was, quote, proudly lawless and anti-law. The danger, he added, is that Trump is the most powerful person in the world, and he does not seem to be very good at restraining himself, and he's not getting any younger. Why should his age matter? Well, that's really a nod to some of the symptoms that sometimes come along with aging. And we're watching in evidence right now. In a recent interview with Time magazine, Mr. Trump was repeatedly pressed on his attempts to increase presidential power, while his answers largely meandered off topic. That's all he's about, really. He denied that he was expanding executive authority, the one answer he actually gave to the question. He said he was deploying power as it was meant to be used. That's not me. This is what the founders intended. And he claimed an electoral mandate for his actions. I think I'm using it properly. And I'm also using it as per my election, he said. Yet Mr. Trump has flaunted his disrespect for other branches of government. When it comes to the courts, he has denounced judges who rule against him, called for their impeachment, while his administration has exploited loopholes and sidestepped complying with some of their injunctions. He and the president of El Salvador all but openly mocked a Supreme Court order to facilitate the return of a man who was deported to a Salvadoran prison despite an immigration judge's order not to send him there, acting as though bringing him back was impossible. Trump's appointees fired a prosecutor because he spoke candidly to a judge about that mistake. And of course, you've seen further developments about it, like the fake request mysteriously denied to make it look like they are in compliance. It's going to buy them a couple of hours in court. When critics accuse Trump of being too aggressive in his use of executive power, his team dodges the question of whether he is abusing his authority by stating that the power legally exists. But the administration is also pushing to change mainstream understandings to expand the authority available to him. For example, Trump has repeatedly challenged the power of the legislative branch. He unilaterally dismantled agencies that Congress has said shall exist as a matter of law. And he fired civil servants, inspectors general, and independent agency heads in defiance of job protections lawmakers wrote into statutes. His goal appears to be to get the Supreme Court's conservative majority to strike down those statutes and enshrine into law the so-called unitary executive theory, developed by the Reagan administration's legal team. The theory is a revisionist interpretation of the Constitution. It would undercut the power of Congress to structure the government and expand presidential power, rendering the executive branch more comprehensively subject to Mr. Trump's whims. And I guess I'm sure the original authors of the unitary executive theory didn't have in mind personal presidential whims driving this, but rather serious and deeply contemplated policy positions articulated by a competent president, hopefully, but at least by competent advisors. But we don't have those either. Trump has also assumed some of the traditional constitutional control delegated to lawmakers over decisions about government spending and taxation. He froze the expenditure of funds that Congress appropriated. He unilaterally imposed taxes on almost all imported goods from around the world. That is what's happening. That's what a tariff is. You know that. He pretends not to. Trump claimed the power to institute these sweeping tariffs by invoking a 1977 emergency powers law that also allows him to impose economic sanctions to address an unusual and extraordinary threat from abroad. That law does not mention tariffs and has never been used in this way before. And of course, what is the unusual and extraordinary threat? I don't know. Invasion. Sure. Okay. It's just not meant to be like that. Scholars of presidential power can identify seeds for some of Mr. Trump's moves in precedents set by past presidents, but they expressed shock at the number of contestable actions he has initiated and the aggressive use to which he's put them. Many of his executive orders, they say, are difficult to connect to mainstream understandings of the law. That's a very gentle way of putting it. We've been for a long time marching toward greater executive power and more feckless Congresses. Republicans and Democrats both, though, really. But a couple things seem to be different here, said Michael W. McConnell, a Stanford law professor and former federal appeals court judge appointed by Mr. Bush. One is just the volume. It's an incredible spate of activity on all kinds of different fronts, and at some point, volume begins to have a qualitative feel to it. The second is that it seems to me that a lot of it is being done with much less legal care. Every president makes mistakes, but there's just been a lot more sloppiness, and I just can't believe they could possibly have been approved by the Office of Legal Counsel. That office, an arm of the Justice Department, has traditionally been at the center of executive branch lawyering and acted as an internal check on the presidency. Well, not much of one, but okay. At least they usually make sure that the legal briefs read coherently, but they're just skipping that now. It decides which proposed actions would be lawful or go too far, including vetting the legal and factual claims in draft executive orders before approving them. But Mr. Trump has largely sidelined it. Control over legal vetting of Trump's actions has shifted to inside the White House, not the DOJ, and the orbit of his most influential policy aide, Stephen Miller. While not a lawyer, so who cares, right? While not a lawyer, Mr. Miller has played a key role in legal staffing decisions and has advanced a view that because presidential elections are conducted nationally, Trump embodies democratic legitimacy far more than lawmakers or judges. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president, Mr. Miller told reporters in February. That perspective has bled into legal filings. One spurned a judge's demand for information about the administration's decision to finish transferring a group of Venezuelan migrants to a Salvadoran prison under a wartime law, the Alien Enemies Act. Despite his order to turn the planes around, the judge should back off, the administration insisted, claiming that Mr. Trump wields plenary authority over the matter derived from the Constitution and the mandate of the electorate. The administration made that claim as part of an unusually aggressive invocation of the state secrets privilege, a power the executive branch can use to prevent the exposure of sensitive national security information in court. Typically, presidents use it only for classified information, which they show to judges in private. But neither is the case in the current clash. Trump appears to see even less reason for self-constraint in his first term than in his first term. His hammerlock has only tightened over the Republican Party, which in turn controls the legislative branch, meaning he has no fear of impeachment. One Republican senator, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, recently admitted that we are all afraid of Mr. Trump. He's also been unleashed in part thanks to the Supreme Court, whose 6 Republican appointees last year granted presidents broad immunity from prosecution for crimes committed using their official powers, especially in their interactions with the Justice Department. By the way, just a thought to point out here. Since Trump himself and neither he nor his advisors are particularly concerned with consistency in the application of law, precedent, whatever, even when it comes down to his precious tariffs. Well, I might exempt you from it if you pay me enough money. The Supreme Court, they may not be inclined to, but they can at some point say, yeah, you know what? Either they can go the legalistic route and say, we are making some factual distinctions between what we understood to be presidential immunity and the application Donald Trump has put to it. And we therefore find that he does not have, and that would be totally consistent with their ruling. There are things that we say don't, where immunity does not apply. And we just find that these actions, which we're now angry about, are among that group. Or they can say, we might have gotten that one wrong. We're going to reverse our own decision. And that's well within their purview. That's normal for the Supreme Court to do. It's unusual in the sense that they try not to reverse themselves so quickly, but it is within their purview to overrule their own previous precedent. So they could do that. We shouldn't forget that. Whether or not they'll find the will to do it is another question. Anyway, the president, far more than in his first term, as we said, has cast aside a post-Watergate norm that the White House should stay out of law enforcement decisions. After years of baselessly accusing Barack Obama and Joe Biden of directing investigations into him, he has made a reality the very weaponization of the Justice Department he once railed against. You know my saying about that. Already, Mr. Trump has ordered prosecutors to scrutinize a top cybersecurity aide during his first term, Christopher Krebs, who fell from his favor by contradicting conspiracy theories that voting machines had been hacked to rig the 2020 elections in favor of Biden. Trump directed a similar review by the Department of Homeland Security into Miles Taylor, another first-term official who criticized him. And last week, Trump ordered the Justice Department to scrutinize Act Blue, the Democratic Party's top fundraising platform. Mr. Trump is turning the department into his personal instrument in other ways, installing his own defense lawyers as its leaders. Among other actions, they dropped a corruption case against Mayor Adams of New York, as you know, in what the U.S. Attorney denounced as an unethical abuse of law enforcement power to coerce his help in enacting the president's deportation agenda. The move prompted a wave of resignations by prosecutors. It's too early to know how the system will stand up to this broad and multifaceted effort to concentrate power over the government and American society in Trump's hands. At the moment, Congress is providing no check on him. Democrats, if they retake the House in the 2026 midterm elections, could start trying to perform oversight or conduct impeachment hearings. Still, after the 2018 midterms, Trump vowed to stonewall their subpoenas. And while the House twice impeached him, Senate Republicans protected him from conviction. I guess that's leading other commentators to say, and even some elected Democrats or people who seek to be elected Democrats next time around, well, impeachment doesn't do anything. That's why we're tamping down on impeachment talk. But do remember, I don't know why everybody forgets, we had these huge fights over the extent of congressional subpoena power and whether or not it was contingent or whether it changed in nature in the context of impeachment. And it did. And so I don't know why everybody is forgetting about that. You should be threatening impeachment just to back up your oversight work, if nothing else. Several judges have started to raise the possibility of holding Trump administration officials in contempt for defying their orders, but courts generally must rely on the Justice Department to prosecute criminal contempt. I've been outlining that for you for years. The Supreme Court has yet to rule on the merits of any of Trump's moves, but in recent weeks, the justice has issued an extraordinary order to block, for now, further deportations under the Alien Enemies Act, even though the department said there were no plans for any. By the way, here at this point, I have to tell you, as I'm reaching the end of this thing, I'm realizing while Charlie Savage always does a good job with everything, all he's done so far is summarize the state of affairs that we already knew to exist. So I'm not thrilled with what I got out of the the 10 minutes I spent on a Charlie Savage article, which is an unusual thing. Anyway, maybe what I can do here is throw this piece in, just a quickie from Just Security. I know we're already out of time, and we'll be cutting into poor Justice's show once again on this one. But Ryan Goodman reported for Just Security on something that I think is worth making note of. We've kind of mentioned it in passing, but let me try and squeeze it in a little bit here today. Earlier today, and this was on April 23rd that he mentions this, I discussed one of the sleeper immigration cases that had largely flown below the radar, DVD versus U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Wednesday night, the Justice Department submitted a filing in district court in which it appears to openly describe steps the government took to essentially evade the court's temporary restraining order. What's happening here? The title of the piece kind of sums it up, and we'll really have to depend on that for the moment. Switching from ICE to DOD custody. An alarming violation of court order on deportations to El Salvador. Essentially what's happening here is, as the courts are ordering ICE not to deport these detainees, not to render them to El Salvador, the Trump administration response is, well, you've ordered ICE not to do it, but you didn't have anything to say about the Department of Defense doing it. So under the Alien Enemies Act, we're going to claim that they're now in the custody of the Department of Defense, against whom there is no order about what to do with these people. And so we will fly them out of the country under DOD auspices instead. This is what we were talking about yesterday, about the plaintiffs in another case having to add every government agency in existence to the title of their case.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
That's just another of the semantic games that the Trump administration continues to openly play in defiance of the courts. Okay, time now for us to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. He's got lots of news. Kamala Harris back in it, using a high-profile speech on Wednesday to criticize Trump. See you tomorrow.